well, I probably shouldn't say this, but don't eat the yellow snow.
Don't eat the yellow snow.
But anyway, I told him, if you keep this up, you're not going to get to go. So sure enough, he did it again, and that was probably the hardest thing I ever had to do, was to say, no, you can't go.
All right, today we have joining us Rob. He's going to share a little bit about his life and experiences. So Rob, why don't you take it away?
Okay, well, I've had a very interesting life, to say the least. My mom and dad got divorced when I was 10 years old. My mom ran off with my dad's best friend, so that was pretty awkward. So we lived with my dad. He had custody of my sister and I. And so he was a traveling salesman, so we moved around quite a bit. Always lived in Florida, but I was born in Tampa. We moved to Miramar. Then we moved to Boca way back in the day, which was interesting because Glades Road was just a 2-lane road out to 441. Nothing was built up. You could park on the beach. I used to surf a lot. So that was my childhood in Boca. Then we moved to Lake Worth, and then back to Tampa, then back to Boca again. So I've been in Boca ever since. Anyway, it's interesting because I went to First Christian Church of Boca way back in the day when it used to be a small little church on 51st Street. I was baptized when I was 13 years old. And my mom and dad, they never went to church, but they always encouraged my sister and I to go to church, which I thought was an amazing thing. Had a lot of friends back then in the youth group, and did really well. And I was always kind of envious, this in a strange way, because I always thought some of these Christians that came from a drug background or some kind of family issues and stuff like that, and they became a Christian, they had this amazing story to tell. I didn't really have anything like that. I thought, well, to be a Christian, you really have to have an awesome story, which I didn't. But so I kind of rebelled when I got a little bit older. I kind of did all the things that I shouldn't have done as I got older, and then I realized how stupid that was, and so I came back to church and came back to living the way I should. Anyway, the neat thing was I used to play in a Christian coffee house with a band, and that's where I really picked up my music experience. I love music. I play guitar, play trumpet, later on violin, a little bit of banjo. But anyway, the Christian coffee house was probably one of the most positive, influential things in my life, because it was just a neat place for kids to come. There was a high school age group, which was on Friday night, and then the college and career night on Saturday night. But it's just a place where Christians could come. It was a laid-back atmosphere. Like I said, I drifted away for a while, and then I came back to church, and I met one of the most awesome people in my life. Her name is Sydney. Anyway, that was a funny thing, because she saw me. She was talking with the pastor's wife at the time, Dee Mobley. A lot of people might have remembered Ron Mobley, I don't know. But anyway, she asked the pastor's wife, "Who is that guy?" And she says, "Why?" She says, "Because I'm going to marry him someday." And true enough, we did. We got married. And we went to Calvary Chapel for a while, which was awkward for me because I'd never been in a big church. I've always been in a small church where I knew everybody. And so when you go to a church that has 4,000 people, it's like you just feel like a drop in the ocean. And so that was pretty awkward for me. But anyway, that was a neat part of my life too. We got to go to Israel. That was probably one of the most amazing experiences in my life. Just to see the places where Jesus walked, see where certain miracles were performed. It just brought in a three-dimensional view of what I've read about in the Bible. So that's something I'll never forget. Now, this is kind of strange. A lot of people are going to think I'm a little cuckoo, but when I was going to Calvary Chapel, let me backtrack. After Calvary Chapel, we went to church at Deerfield for a while, and I played on the worship band. And it's funny, it seems like whenever they lose a worship leader, it's like, hey, Rob, can you step up and fill in? Sure. Now, so that's always been the story of my life. It's just kind of filling in when the need comes, which I don't mind. I love doing that. So played on the worship team for quite some time there. And then while I was going there, oddly, I had a dream. And I never dream, but this dream was like just so 3D, in color, real. It involved the pastor at Deerfield at that time and Bob Coy, which a lot of people know. And I was walking down this path. It was the field at First Christian Church or Connected Life at that time where they have all the picnic tables. And I was walking there, and there was a walkway. And I was walking along there, and I got the okay from Pastor Jeremy at that time and Pastor Bob that it was okay for me to go back. For some reason, I just had this yearning to go back. And so after that dream, it was just kind of an eye-opener. It's like, maybe I should go back. So we did. And Sid and I started going back, and that's why we ended up back where we're at. So
why don't we take it back, to your early life? Well, I'd like to get more into some of the details of your upbringing. So first of all, can you tell us more about your parents? I understand that they divorced when you were pretty young, but what did your dad do? What did your mom do? What type of people were they?
Well, my mom was very beautiful. She used to be a model. She used to be featured in parades on the float, and she's just a knockout. She was very beautiful. Unfortunately, like I mentioned, my dad and her got divorced, and the reasons why. But it was kind of awkward because my dad had such disdain for my mom that he wouldn't let us see her except for once a month. So it's unusual because he had custody of us. Normally the mother has custody of the children, but he had custody of us. And so growing up, I really didn't get to know her. So it's like from 10 years old till 18-ish maybe that I finally started to get to know her a little bit better. And the funny thing is, my dad always talked bad about my mom, but my mom never said anything bad about my dad. And after he passed away, it's all of a sudden my mom started telling us all these stories about my dad. And it's like, oh my goodness. So that gave me a better understanding why things didn't work out.
Yeah. So was model like her main profession?
No, she actually, that was kind of a side thing. She worked for a company in Tampa called Continental Can Company. And I don't honestly know exactly what her position there was. I think she was a secretary, but I like to do art and I like to do music, and that's where a lot of what I got is from her because she had that influence at a young
More of a
age.
creative type, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how about your dad? Tell us a little about what did he do for a living?
He worked for a company called Kirsch Drapery Hardware, and I don't know if you all know Dick Chestnut. I know a lot of the older people in church would know Dick. He was a big part of Connected Life, or what was First Christian Church of Boca at the time. But he worked for a drapery company, and my dad he sold Kirsch Drapery Hardware. And so my dad knew Dick Chestnut, and he had a big family. And that was a big reason that my sister and I started going to church, because of Dick Chestnut. He had a big influence on my sister and I because of his family. We were really good friends with all his kids, and we started going to church, and had a big youth group at that time.
Could you maybe tell us a little bit about your childhood, being raised kind of in a single father situation? How was that for you?
I just remember bits and pieces. It was really kind of uneventful, other than my dad had a lot of anger, which I think showed through. But I've always been a positive kid, and Candy, even my sister, even though she's older, she's a little bit mentally challenged. So I was always the big brother, and we kind of looked out for each other growing up.
Could you share a little bit more about your sister?
Yeah, she, like I said, she was challenged. A lot of, I was kind of her big brother, because a lot of people would pick on her, and I would always kind of stand up for her. I think it was hard on her because she never had the mother figure in her life. And it was just my dad raising the two of us. And we had, well, just to give you a background, my dad was married 4 times, divorced 3 times.
Oh, wow.
My mom was married 3 times, divorced twice. So that just gives you an idea of the kind of life that we had to deal with growing up. And that's why I promised myself that when I get married, I'm going to stay married, because I didn't want to put my kids through what we had to go through, which has worked out well, because Sid and I have been married for over 40 years, so we've made things work.
I'm sure it's challenging, but it's also good to see that you've come out with a pretty positive outlook.
Yeah.
Could you share a little bit about your time in school? How was that for you? Were you involved in any sports and things like that?
Well, that's probably the hardest thing, because we moved around so much after my mom and dad got divorced, so I was always in a new school. Hard to make new friends, because when you're the new kid in school, you always kind of get left behind. So I never was popular. I never got a chance to have really solid friends growing up. So that was pretty awkward.
Can you think of any funny childhood stories or mischief you got up to?
And no, really, I didn't really get into trouble until I started being rebellious, my later teen
Gotcha.
years. And that's when I started, smoking pot and drinking. And the big thing then was discotheques. So,
Go dancing.
yeah, if you
Gotcha.
could, had the moves and stuff, you were really.
So would you say that you had the moves?
I thought I did.
Did other people think that you
Probably
had the moves?
not. But I realized too, going through that whole scene, how empty life was. People would always put on airs and try to be someone that they're not. And it's just, it didn't take me long to realize that this wasn't what I was really interested in doing. So, there's always that empty spot where you're always searching for something. And that's when I realized that, when I grew up, excuse me.
Did you need some water?
Yeah, I think so. I lost my train of thought again.
Here we go. Here's the famous Sid delivering some water. Much needed water.
Thank you.
There we go.
Yeah, but I just realized that life was more than just the lights and the friends, and the friends then that I thought were friends that weren't really
acquaintances,
friends.
I suppose.
Exactly, yeah. That I knew there was just something more, and I kind of kept reaching back to what I grew up with in the church, that I had real friends back then, and life wasn't fake. Life wasn't putting on airs or trying to impress people. It was genuine.
Yeah, that's very important, and it's good that you came to that realization.
Yeah.
So, you had this kind of uneventful childhood. In your words, you finished school, presumably. Did you go into college from there? Or?
I did. I graduated Palm Beach Junior College, which is now Palm Beach Community College. Got my AA degree there, and my goals then were I wanted to be a marine biologist. And so I did 2 years at FAU, and I knew of people that had become marine biologists and wind up cleaning fish tanks and shrimp tanks, and it's like, that's not what I signed up for. And so at that time, I was working part-time at a lumber company, which I loved. I love wood. That was just a fun part of my life. And anyway, long story short, my branch manager said, why don't you make a career out of this? And I gave it some thought. I said, yeah, I think I will. I made that my full-time career in the lumber company. They offered me a job in sales, so I traveled to Tampa and down the West Coast and then back to the East Coast, which was kind of hard on our marriage because I'd spend basically the whole week out of town. And at the time, McEwen Lumber used to be a family-owned company, and then it was bought out by Hammer Mill Paper Products, which is a big company. So once you were a person and then you started becoming a number, Hammer Mill was bought out by International Paper Products, which you became even smaller, and it's like, this just isn't working out. Sid's father owned a landscape lighting company, very successful, and so I went to work for him and started off doing lighting designs. I would travel to people's houses and walk the property and figure out lightings and do presentations. And well, plus I would also do all the drafting for the lighting designs. Now back then that was all hand drawn drafting. And about that time, AutoCAD, which is computer assisted design, came along, and her dad says, I want you to take this AutoCAD course and learn how to do the computer assisted design. So I did like a 2-day crash course, and my mind was just blown away. I've never done anything with computers before. It was all new to me, and my instructor says, don't let it get you down. He says, you'll learn more just playing around with this program than I can teach you. And so I started doing that, and he was right. I did years with the AutoCAD system, doing the drafting and the lighting. And anyway, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, which was weird. I had no idea. We were at Sid's brother's house, and it was my nephew's birthday, and he had this big toy that required a lot of assembly, and I used to love to do assemble things and put things together, build models, all that kind of stuff. And so I'm looking at the instructions, and I got the pieces in one hand and the instructions in the other, and my mind just froze. I couldn't make the two connect, and I'm thinking something's wrong. And so anyway, they wound up calling the ambulance, took me to the hospital. They ran all kinds of tests, and the neurologist says, we're not going to let you go home until we figure out what's going on. So anyway, they figured out that I had multiple sclerosis. Most of the time I do okay. I have cognitive issues. I have a hard time remembering things. Not so much in the past, but recent things. I mean, if you were to tell me to do something, 20 minutes later, I might totally forget what you told me that you wanted me to do.
Gotcha.
That kind of a thing. But anyway, my neurologist says the best things you can do is to keep your mind stimulated. So between my music and art, I love doing art. He said games, crossword puzzles, Sudoku, whatever you can do to stimulate your brain. He says that's the best thing you can do. So I've been doing that actively, and it's helped a lot. I'm still not where I was once or once was, but
Could you tell the audience a little bit more about MS?
well, it's so hard to diagnose because it affects different parts of the brain, and depending on which part of the brain it affects, some people have a hard time. They're crippled; they can't walk. A lot of times, it affects people's vision. Um, with me, it is cognitive impairment, and it's frustrating because people can't see what's going on in your head, but I know what's going on, and it's frustrating sometimes because I know, well, like I'll try to find words, and sometimes it's on the tip of my tongue, but I can't find it, So sometimes I have a hard time expressing myself.
Do they know exactly what causes that? Could you tell us a little bit about that, or?
Yeah, it's an autoimmune disease.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and like I said, it depends on which part of the brain. I only have one brain, but multiple sclerosis is actually, sclerosis means scarring. So where your nerve is, it's protected by a sheath called the myelin sheath. And with multiple sclerosis, some of the myelin sheath breaks down and it creates like short circuits. So depending on which part of the brain you have this, it might affect your motor movements, it might affect your speech, it might affect your eyesight, cognitive issues, like I said. So it's very hard to diagnose, but they've been coming up with new and improved drug treatments all the time.
When did you end up getting married? You didn't tell us.
Oh, I didn't. Oh, well, that was in 1982.
And how old were you guys then?
Well, I was 24 and Sid was 18, so I
You
took her,
snagged her as soon as she was
snagged her
ready
right
to
out
go.
of the nest, man. Yeah, yeah, but and it was hard, like I said, with my upbringing and the marital strife, and she came from a pretty rocky background with her family dynamics too. So, and when we first got married, it was pretty rocky for a couple years, and but we worked through it. And I guess one of the biggest takeaways from that, and this is probably part of the golden nuggets you're going to ask me later, but I'm going to tell you right now that one of the biggest things that I've learned over the years is you don't sweat the small stuff. It's just not worth getting all twisted about the things that don't really matter.
Could you share a little bit more about maybe any funny stories or interesting, bizarre things that have happened, during your guys' marriage?
So her big thing was she always had to keep going home to her mom and dad, which they didn't live far away, but it was a big strain because it's like we're married and you
Yeah.
keep going back to your mom and dad. And so finally her dad says, "You got to stop this,"
Yeah.
which I'm glad he did, so had to cut the apron strings. And but we've done well. With music, I played on worship teams for many years and really enjoyed that. But sometimes it just really took a toll on our marriage because I called Sid the worship widow, because sometimes I would spend hours and hours a week between, band practice in the middle of the week and sometimes Saturday, sometimes Sunday, and I was always gone. And I just felt really bad because we never had time together. And so I just got to the point where I just needed to kind of sit back and reprioritize everything. So anyway, I miss it a lot, but I still have my guitar here and I still play when I need to or want to. And
Yeah, I think that's a lesson for the audience as well. Sometimes good things can become not good things. Not every good opportunity is one that needs to be pursued forever.
right.
It's about finding the balance that works for you in your life.
Exactly.
Any stories that you'd like to share, about kids or anything like that?
Oh boy. Well, Ryan, our firstborn child, he was always kind of obstinate kid growing up, and but we never beat our kids. We yelled at, we yelled at them.
That's what you say on camera, at
That's
least.
what I saw on camera, right? But one day we were at Publix, and he was misbehaving, and I said, "Ryan, stop that," and he kept doing it. And I said, "Stop it," and I gave him the look. And he says in the aisle with crowded people in Publix, "Don't hit me, Daddy." And I'm going, "Oh my
no.
goodness!" It's like, I've never laid a hand on him.
Did everyone give you a dirty look after that, or?
Yeah, pretty much. But I've learned that the Vulcan death grip works really well.
Oh yeah, just a nice firm one.
Yeah, if your kids are misbehaving in public and you can't spank them, the Vulcan death grip,
Yeah,
right there.
Okay.
Yeah, it works every time.
A little pinch will do the trick.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep. It's disheartening because when he was growing up, he kept misbehaving. I kept telling him to, stop, and he kept misbehaving. I said, if you don't stop this, I said, and this was when he was getting ready to go on the high school patrol trip to Washington, D.C., not high school, but middle school, yeah. But it's a trip to Washington, D.C., which I did when I was a kid, and it was like one of the most awesome experiences ever. Smithsonian Institute, National Geographic, all this stuff. But anyway, I told him, if you keep this up, you're not going to get to go. So sure enough, he did it again, and that was probably the hardest thing I ever had to do, was to say, no, you can't go. Because I remember how much of an experience it was for me. And but looking back on it, talking to him, he says, "Dad, that was the best thing you could have done." So he realizes what he did and what I did, and the consequences. You got to pay the consequences for your decisions.
Is there any tips that you can give for parents out there who might be dealing with, stubborn kids or anything like that?
Well, unfortunately, I don't think you can give them away. Well, the best thing that I can suggest is you need to follow through. If you make threats, and when I say threats, I mean if you tell your child you're going to, if they do this, you're going to do that, you need to follow through, because they realize that if you don't follow through, that they're going to get away with it the next time and the next time. And a lot of kids nowadays, they don't have that that discipline. They don't have that respect for authority, and which I think is a lot of problems with our society today. They don't respect authority, and if they don't learn that at home, they're not going to learn it out on the street or in life.
All right. Well, I think we've learned a lot about you, your family, experiences. Do you think you can kind of wrap us up with one nugget of wisdom, something that's going to be, fruitful for everyone who's listening?
Okay. Well, like I mentioned earlier, don't sweat the small stuff. Well, I probably shouldn't say this, but don't eat the yellow snow.
Don't eat the yellow snow.
It's so important to be grounded in your faith. It's so important to be an example to your kids, not just what you say, but what you do, because they watch you more than they listen, and they want to see consistency in your life. So it's important to practice what you preach. I guess that's about it.
All right. Well, appreciate you, being part of this interview today, Rob.
Okay, thank you.